With the recent reveal of the Fable reboot at the Xbox Game Showcase in July, Kingdoms of Amalur ret-reckoning arrives at the perfect time to help scratch that Western action RPG itch. I'm Anthony from the Beta Network, and in today's video, we'll be taking a look back at the original, followed up by detailing all the new additions in ret-reckoning. Constructed in a similar vein to Fable, Kingdoms of Amalur still holds up surprisingly well. There's a lore-rich plot and sizable main quest, heaps of side missions to sink your teeth into, and an in-depth character customization system, craftable items, and loot drops that actually reward you for breaking boxes and crates. Just like when we smashed all those pots in Ocarina of Time. You know what they say, take it out on someone else's equipment. The combat system in particular looks and feels awesome to this day. Reckoning's heavy focus on combos, whilst varying up your movesets with a range of unique weapons and spells, are a marvel to witness. There's a gravitas to the battle animations too, and they feel ultra satisfying to pull off. That slow-mo effect before the earthquake attack is always super hype. Certain enemies can also be stealth killed, Assassin's Creed style, or juggled with combos like a ragdoll. Keeping them floating above with an assortment of skills is very entertaining, but I wish you could follow up with some airborne strikes like in Kingdom Hearts or Devil May Cry, as I felt this could have set Reckoning even further apart from Fable. Similar to DMC, the character animations you can watch in the move list menu are really appreciated, helping you to visualize how each skill works. That being said, it wouldn't hurt if the game was a little harder too. I only really struggled when there was a heap of enemies on screen. Even if I made a ton of mistakes in battle, I rarely got punished for it. Amalur's eponymous Reckoning mode makes these encounters even easier to manage, but so help me are they not gratifying to perform. Reckoning mode allows the protagonist to slow down time and dish out some crippling damage whilst receiving a huge defense buff in the process. Once a few enemies have been defeated, you can choose to unleash an intense Mortal Kombat-esque fatality move called Fate Shifting. This immediately destroys all knocked out foes whilst reckoning and displays a button prompt you can mash for experience multipliers up to 100%. What I'd normally end up doing is placing my controller down, index finger ready, and start staring a hole into my monitor, waiting for the button prompt. It reminds me a lot of that one Mario Party minigame where people would tense their arm for so long to the point of shaking just so they could button mash their controller into oblivion. Good times. If you're enjoying this video so far, make sure you hit that subscribe button and press all on the bell notifications. The more subscriptions we get from viewers like yourself, the more we can grow, and the more content we can deliver straight to your YouTube homepage. Thanks for your support. The character class customization in this game is glorious as well. Called Destinies, the protagonist can essentially choose any attributes they prefer from the fighter, mage, and rogue disciplines. You can also opt for a combination of the two, or a jack-of-all-trades approach to combat. You'll also receive stat bonuses for the style of play you choose. This helps drive Amalur away from the traditional RPG job systems for a more open-ended outlook. In one combo, you can stab with a dagger, swap to a hammer attack, then finish off with a strong spell cast. The game actively encouraging experimentation and freedom of choice for the player. Big props there. When the protagonist levels up, depending on which points you assign to might, finesse, and sorcery on the skill tree will shape the protagonist to your liking. But at the end of the day, if you're not happy with how the stats are shaping up, you could swap out the allocated points, or even start the whole process again by consulting NPCs known as Fate Weavers. Speaking of fate, Kingdoms of Amalur citizens believe that mortal creatures already have their destinies decided for them, so when our seemingly dead silent protagonist is somehow restored to life at the start of the game, his fate is now suddenly unbound. Being the main premise of the game, the cycle of pre-chosen paths that transpire around the main character has apparently been happening for 10,000 years. 10,000. Since the game thinks a majority of these events are of the utmost importance, how this translates over to the plot is with huge, stinking piles of exposition that quite honestly bored me to tears. I can only handle an NPC babbling on about what happened to X and Y for so long. You'll then hear a gamut of names and terminology that won't mean much to you, breaking the cardinal sin of writing, that is, show, not tell. What's disappointing is that it swallows up the intriguing hook of not being tied to fate. These in-game conversations honestly had me checked out faster than Sonic 06.
Chaos Control!
The world building by R.A. Salvatore and his writing of Amalur's rich backstory is something to be commended though. You'll discover local customs, traditions, cultures, and dialects in different areas, and the voice acting is consistently solid throughout. The faction and side quests complement this in their sheer quantity and scope alone. There's at least over 200 plus hours of content here, including the DLCs. So if you're hungry for lore, you'll get more than you bargained for here. I found the characters to be largely forgettable, unfortunately, bar a few exceptions. Why does this person look like a Final Fantasy character? What's with the random belts? Did Tetsuya Nomura make this design? He probably did. In all seriousness, there's one word that kept crawling into my mind during gameplay that I just couldn't shake. Generic. Each character you meet seems so by the numbers and bland. It feels like you've met all these stereotypes in the Elder Scrolls, Fable, and any other Tolkien-inspired media before. There's an array of characters that barely have any screen time as well, and those dull exposition dumps do not help their cause in the slightest. The same thing can be applied to the overall world presentation itself. It's quite gorgeous looking, don't get me wrong, but there's no real identity for Amalur to latch onto. I feel like the developers just snapshotted a heap of Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter backgrounds, then slapped together whatever design blueprints they had. A little too cliche for my liking. I was drawn to some of the enemy designs, as that's ostensibly where the manpower went. Albeit, on an overall scale, it's very uninspired. The music wasn't jibing with me either, and that really sucks because Grant Kirkhope of Rare and Banjo-Kazooie fame has some absolute killer soundtracks. I'm not exactly sure what the directive was here, but again, Amalur's OST just comes across as generic, fantasy adventure, insert title here affair, with no real impact. From a composer that can make such awesome tunes, and we've all heard how catchy and vibrant his style can be, it's actually rather sad how lackluster these compositions turned out. As much as it pains me to say, I honestly can't remember any of the melodies from traveling around Amalur. On the topic of traveling, a fast travel feature and the option to set the run button to tap instead of hold are much appreciated here. Since you'll be traversing on foot for hours in Amalur, you'll notice the open world approach isn't truly open, as you'll need to progress through the story to reach other parts of the continent first. One feature I respect is how the PC version can dynamically shift between the gamepad and keyboard plus mouse controls, so there's no need to swap out your inputs. Both control schemes work incredibly well too. So what's new in Re-Reckoning? Well, to address the somewhat easy difficulty of the original, Kaiko, the company that's porting this new version, have included a very hard mode to address this concern. They've also revamped the level lock system on zones. Since the original determined the enemy level of a zone when you first entered it into your save file, in Re-Reckoning, levels are rather recalculated every time you enter or re-enter a zone within a minimum and maximum level range. It's basically so each zone is not clamped to one level specifically. Kaiko's made these level calculations easier to mod in the new version as well. For lockpicking, the loot level locks have been removed, meaning loot containers now only store the generated loot when they're opened. Before, they used to store it when entering a zone and were generated at the current player level. The generation of said loot has also been revamped to better match the character's skill set, so you'll pretty much receive more appropriate gear for your current player setup more often than the original. Graphics-wise, full native 4K support is being offered, and the textures, lighting, and shadow systems have been updated with a new rendering engine. But the graphics don't really look that different from the 2012 release, if I'm being completely honest. Although there are some extra display and audio options like changing the HUD size, modern camera controls like field of view, camera smoothness, and auto follow settings, as well as multilingual subtitles and voice options. Both DLCs from the original, Teeth of Naros and Legend of Dead Kal, are included in the package. There's also a new expansion on the way called Fatesworn, which is being released sometime in 2021, but we'll have to wait and see how that turns out as it's still in development. Be sure to subscribe to our channel if you haven't, so you won't miss out on any of our videos. And while you're still there, why not check out Green Man Gaming? They have a ton of awesome games available at great prices. So click that link in the description to save on a range of other great titles. And if this video gave you a detailed insight into Kingdoms of Amalur and you want to support the channel, the best way you can do that is by hitting the like button and subscribing. It boosts this video up in the algorithm and it really does help us out. Hope you enjoy the game and I'll see you guys in the next video.